Okay, so I'll go ahead and we'll do a quick breakout room. That way we've got smaller groups to start, and then so you guys can have a little bit of a discussion about, I think, for the first one, kind of what were the main things that stuck out to you, or main takeaways that you had from the meetings that we did last week, either from the first one if you participated in that, or if you watched the video back, and then from the presentation that Marieke did. So we'll go ahead and do the some smaller breakout rooms so everybody has a chance to talk, and then we'll come back together and we'll share from there.
Okay, we're back then.
Okay, perfect.
I think killed the conversation.
Sorry. No, it was really good. It was interesting. I think both groups were having some interesting discussion. So I'll just I'll open the floor and see if somebody from each of the groups just maybe wants to share a little bit about what the conversation was, or some of the highlights, or some of the things that maybe were common as takeaways, or some things that stood out to the group. So I'll open the floor so we can have a conversation about it.
I don't know which one was group 1 and which one was group 2, but if I don't know, Scott or Mauricio, that you guys were commenting a lot of things, if you guys want to present.
It just, you know, we talked about a lot of interesting things. I keep thinking about this idea of bias, and how does my relationship with a player that I've been working with for a while affect the way that I then evaluate that player, based upon whether, you know, we've got a very positive relationship or maybe a more strained relationship.
So along those lines, and I don't know if maybe somebody from another group wants to participate as well. I think we were saying that's a really interesting fact. And in fact, we were commenting that in when we recorded the podcast with Raul Boss, he was saying the same thing. He was saying it's very, very hard not to be biased. So when he was working at Hoffenheim, he was telling us the story that they would go scout and they would do it separately. They would go together, two scouts, but one on each side of the field, to avoid any type of sinking, right? So they wanted to avoid the possibility of one of them saying like, look at number 14, I like him, because that would automatically create a subjective impression or effect on the other scout. So yeah, the bias part is very complicated.
I would like to add something to what you guys have said. I think it's really subjective to to evaluate or measure behavior. For example, it depends on the person, of the point of view, from the point of view you see any kind of situation. So I think it would be ideal, and I know this happens in Rush, that you have like a core of values that you evaluate, that everyone follows the same line, the same pattern, for example. So you can try to not be biased all the time. So I think it would be really important, because we are very focused on measuring soccer skills, physical tactical skills, but sometimes it's really hard to evaluate or measure behavior, as I said. Yeah.
I think sometimes, hello everybody, hope everybody's well. I think sometimes we can look at the behaviors we talk about, such as, say, let's take tenacity. Example, there's a session, we're out of balls, you know, which players actually go to get balls, which players go to get the close balls, which players stand still, which players are jumping the fence, climbing the tree, and getting the furthest ball away. I think this is an ability to measure a behavior, a character trait, and stuff like that. But it's sometimes we have to look at the things we're looking at. You have to notice what it is we're looking for, and know, you know. But watching in that one thing we could miss 3 other things that are going on because we're looking for that one thing. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I'll say that when we had that discussion a lot scouting for US soccer, that how do you save space, or how do you systematically make sure there's room for the unexpected? Because if you have a list of 6 qualities that you're looking for, which is US soccer's, and then you obviously saw their list of all of the behaviors that you look for in the attacking and defending moments of the game, et cetera, et cetera. And then, yeah, you can get so bogged down on, well, is she fit enough? And she seems to be struggling to make the run, like whatever that is, that one quality that maybe you're really focused on in that moment, and you miss something that's totally unexpected, or something that's totally different. And so I think that in a network like US Soccer's, that's part of the power of having such a broad network, is you do have a lot of different eyes and a lot of different lenses that people are evaluating through. It's a challenge, but trying to hold space for the unexpected when you're evaluating players or you're watching a game and scouting, I think was one of the most challenging things to do, to be honest.
But that's super important, you know, and that really relates. Again, this is not really an opinion; it's more of a question. That's what I was trying to ask before. It's like, how careful do we need to be with over measuring, right? In a way, because suddenly we're so concerned about finding that one thing. Can he do a volley with the left? Can he do a volley with the right? And maybe we're not paying attention to the unexpected that actually makes a lot of sense. It makes a huge difference, right?
I think we've also got to come away from technology too, right? Everybody's looking for those things that can help give those marginal gains, and we forget about the important stuff, the sport, the things, the key qualities, whatever. Like when Instat, I think it was Instat or Prozone first came out in the Premier League, Stelios Giannakopoulos, who was the number 7 for Bolton, had the highest pass completion rate. Yet when the manager Sam Allardyce looked at his completion rate and his assists, he had a 92.4% completion rate on his passes, but he had 0 assists. So when they went back and looked at the game tapes, all his passes were square and backwards, but he had a 92.4% success rate, right? So we've got to know what it is we're measuring, but then also, like Megan says, leave that space for the unexpected. And we can't, there's some things you can't measure, but are visible. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, we look for those marginal gains, but let's not forget, like Edgar says in our breakout room, people first, and so on and so forth. So
no, very, very, very important. And in fact, you know, Chris, and I'm sorry to the others for recapping things that Megan, Chris, myself, that we've been learning this month from listening to very good presentations. But you know, something that really stick to me was how important it is to be consistent, right? Like, of course, we knew it in advance. We were not going to say like, okay, you see a player one time, it's going to be enough. But that consistency, it's also very important to detect talent, I think. And I heard this maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, and it shocked me. I was listening to a presenter say one of the expressions of talent, it's actually the capacity to learn. So, and she was giving an example, and she was saying, if you see Messi and Ronaldo, were they less or more talented than, I don't know, Maradona and Pelé? And she was saying, I don't know, but there's something that is remarkable, and it's extremely talented from both, that is their capacity to learn. And if you think where they started, what they could do 10 years and what they can do now, it's true. It's like their talent in a way expresses in their capacity to learn every single day. They get better at doing things. I can shoot free kicks my whole life, and I'm still not going to be that good at it. But Messi went from being bad to being the best in the world at it. It's an incredible talent to learn in something that was not there from the very start, right?
Yeah, but Pablo, there are, like I said earlier, I said like, okay, so we have to think about the person first, right? But how many talents does a person has? that you cannot measure. And I don't know, there are a million talents that we could say. I don't know, ones are good in maths, other ones are, great masters dribbling the ball. Others have others are talented running, but, how to combine all of those and how to teach as much as talents that you could give a player so they can be the type of player that we're looking for, or the type of player that we want for our teams. So that's, I think that's the most challenging part for me as a coach, is how to teach them to bring all those talents together and use them, for them as persons, and then for my team. So that's something that always, like, okay, Messi and Ronaldo, well, they're from other planet. So, but we have down to earth players. So how can we teach all of that? How can we give them, that information that comes, with Messi and Ronaldo? Okay, they have a talent to learn. Okay, so how I teach that talent to my players? How do I bring it here, and how do I measure that talent?
Yeah, but Chico, like, of course, Messi and Ronaldo are extreme examples. But since I heard that, I started paying attention to my players, right? Like, I was paying attention before, of course, but I started paying attention to their capacity to learn, and that shocked me, actually, because I realized that some of my players, it doesn't matter if they're really good or really bad, but I was impressed by their capacity to learn from there, and I was like, wow, that's an expression of talent as well. And I don't know if I would have noticed that before.
And sometimes it's the player that at 12, 13, or 14 is way behind the group from a performance standpoint, but has a really large capacity to learn, who ends up being the one that makes it. When you look at some of the best in the world, the number of times they were passed over or not picked, whether it's Rose Lavelle or McCall Zerboni or whoever it is, that when they were 13, 14, 15, even for some players, when they were 20, 21, 22, they weren't good enough. But their capacity to learn outpaced the players who were at the top. And so I do think that's probably to me, a key quality that for US soccer might be hard to track, but in a local club environment would be one that I would want to know about every single player in the environment. Because if somebody's a 10 out of 10 on a capacity to learn, she's got a much higher ceiling than the player who's a 3, who right now is scoring loads of goals as a 12 or 13-year-old.
Completely. And in fact, in Colorado Rush, Tim always says that about Lindsay. He says she was not the best. Now she's world champion. And she says she was like the 3rd or the 4th player. She was not even the captain, nothing.
Yeah, 5 years ago, she still probably wasn't one of the best in the world, or even close, not even in the conversation. And I think is a player who is continuing to get better. When you talk about Messi and Ronaldo, they continue to get better. It's unbelievable what Messi's 36, 37 years old, and he's continuing to get better. And I think there's women on the Lindsay Horan is one, certainly on the US stage, that's the same.
Completely.
Kylie, can I pick on you? Kylie had I think an interesting take on the importance of sort of a framework and consistency, and then just some wrestling with some ideas about how it translates to certain environments and others. Kylie, do you mind sharing with the group? Because I thought it was really good.
Yeah. So basically what I kind of took away was Marieka's idea of like a framework and saying, okay, like what is our like ideal top player, and how do we build out our framework from what we think our ideal player is, and kind of talking about how US soccer is super big in terms of like geographics and all of that, and so is Rush. But then my kind of question or thought was, okay, so if we create like a top or ideal Rush player in terms of like what we want to see and what we want to be as a club, how does that apply to like me, who has a 3rd or 4th team in my age group? Like, that's great to have that framework of here's what I want my top Rush player to look like, and we can apply that to maybe, the DA teams and all of that. But I'm sitting here with a 3rd or 4th team. And so how do we kind of lower or change or kind of describe those rush qualities for a player that's not in that situation as a DA or whatever.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for sharing. And I share with Kylie. I think that's U.S. soccer has the luxury of only having to sort of manage and track and evaluate the top 100 or 120 players in the country in each age group. But generally speaking, in a local club environment or in an organization like Rush, like it's not all the top 1%, but it's important that there's a consistency to the evaluation, like you said, and there's a consistency to the way that we apply those key qualities or those valued characteristics and right size them for the age group and the level and what that pathway might look like for that player that might be different than the pathway for a player who's on a pre-professional kind of track from a young age. So it's maybe a bigger challenge, I think, than the one that U.S. soccer is staring at for sure. Anything else that anyone is burning to share or things that are on your heart or on your mind?
Here in
yeah,
the club,
please.
what we do is we have one coach and one psychologist that they work together and they help us as soccer coaches to evaluate the players. So what we do is they help us, focus players on all the psyche, talents that, we need to bring to them, but they also help us evaluate all of those values, those core values that we have, as Sierra here in Colombia and also as Rush. So this work has helped us a lot here in Colombia because we are able to not only have, all of those soccer skills that, players need, but it also help us, to see how players, how their mind works in certain, activities or certain when they're playing a game, how their mind works. And it really helps, that teamwork that we have between a soccer coach and a psychologist. It helps us, a lot to do those evaluations. So, that's something that, I'm really proud of to have here because it has helped us, to have not only good soccer players, but, good persons as well.
That's incredible. And I think, when you coach long enough, you become an amateur psychologist in some ways, but but to have somebody who that's their training and that's their background and that's what they do and their expertise, I think it allows you to, take a really collaborative approach. And like you said, really make sure it's a holistic evaluation of the players. So that's an incredible resource. Yeah, Ruben, I think you got to take yourself off mute, though. I think you're muted.
I think he's muted, right?
I know. I think, that's what I asked him. I think, Ruben, if you scroll over the bottom of the screen, you should be able to unmute down on the left, maybe?
I think I am now.
Yeah, perfect. We can hear you now.
Okay. Wow, I said a lot already. So, like you said, we become pretty good psychologists ourselves, being understand to know the kids and understand what their abilities, and not every kid's the same. They have different abilities, and our approach, like the gentleman was saying, the coach from Colombia, there's a certain approach in teaching the same level, but you have those kids who are motivated, hungry to learn more, and then you have the other ones here who like to watch the jet streams in the sky, and so it's not the same. So that coach has to be a very unique coach, patient, understanding, and then when being able to evaluate, they're going to see those characteristics, those skills. But I like the idea too that we must really look at the values and instill the values, core values with these kids as we're going. And little by little, all of that will rise. The cream will come to the top, and then there they are. We're going to have those star players. And so from Colombia, from Bolivia, Honduras, it's going to be a tough gig to get them like what y'all have in the States with Rush. But I believe doing what y'all are doing, and it trickles down to us, that we were, like we talked about, this way, if I have a player and I send that player, he or she, then they should be able to fit in automatically when they go to the state, just like that.
Yeah, and I think that's our hope, right? And that's, I think, one of the powerful things about being part of the network. And the better job we do as coaches to implement frameworks and implement consistent ways of thinking about the game and teaching the game and seeing the game in our environments that are aligned with, the bigger organization. It makes it an easier pathway for players. And we regularly have players in Colorado who come in from New Mexico to train with our teams. And we have some players from Washington who will come in and train in Georgia. And we've seen really good success with it. And I think that it's, we hope, and I think it's a big push right now to really try to build the pathways for international players too, both directions, from the US to other countries and certainly from other countries into the US. And so I think, the player evaluation and having a framework is the starting point for that, for sure.
And Pablo is on track. He and Thiago and some others are getting that the rest of us in line with Rush USA. And so I really appreciate what they're doing with all the translations and everything that's going on with the material that's coming out, and the coaches' education. It's just phenomenal. It's really, when I see something in Spanish, I get so excited for all my coaches, because that's what we're needing, so that we stay aligned what was happening with Rush USA. And I keep on saying Rush USA because, international Rush, we're in Honduras. And so, but we look to y'all, and what y'all are doing, Pablo and your team, y'all doing a great work. So high five to you. No touching, high five.
Well,
Thank you, Ruben.
we think pretty highly of him. We think pretty highly of Pablo too. And I know it's been a labor of love, I think, getting some of the translations and trying to align some of the programs and really trying to make the tools and the things more accessible to all clubs, regardless of level, regardless of geographic location and language and culture. And I think it's a massive undertaking, but certainly one that I think we've got a team that's up for the job, hopefully.
We do. I have a good team. Thank you all very much. It's the team.
Yeah. Well, in the interest of everybody's time, first, again, I want to thank everyone for joining and for sharing and for being, I think these are great. To me, that this is the part of the education piece that I really enjoy, where it's interactive and hearing other people's thoughts and ideas and getting to share your own versus the passive process of just taking on information. I learn a lot better when I can process it with other people.
Sure.
And so I certainly appreciate you all, joining us for that kind of process over the course of the last couple of weeks. We'll send some follow-up information and also ask for some feedback from everyone on things that they liked and ways that we can maybe continue to push and improve the workshop structure and some of the content and information that we're sharing. And then I'll try to put together and send out some takeaways by the end of the week, just some overviews and maybe summaries of some of the things that we covered, and then some guided questions to lead you hopefully back into the process of reflecting on how do you take this back to your own teams, to your own environment, to your own club, as we're starting to do with SPI, certainly, and with the coach education team, to try to go work from both directions so that coaches are doing it on the ground and really working towards it. And we're kind of trying to do the same thing in putting frameworks together. So we'll get that information to everybody by the end of the week. And again, if you have other questions or other follow-up things, or there's things that you have a burning desire to learn more about, please reach out and get in touch. And if I don't know the answer or I don't have the resource, I will absolutely put you in touch with somebody who does. So again, I really appreciate everybody's attentiveness and willingness to participate. Yeah, wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll get to reconnect on the next workshop.